Okay, so this is my review of Nine Perfect Strangers finale. Like last week, I'm going off the cuff here because screeners weren't sent out for these last two episodes, so I'm going to do my best just to riff here. I just watched it, like you guys. So I'm actually have a lot of mixed feelings about this finale, but I'm actually more impressed than I thought I would be. It's like a little bit of a surprise, and it's one of those effects where it's the finale, maybe it's not super satisfying for the season as a whole. I didn't think that was going to happen. I think this show you can divide right down the middle in characters and see that certain group got the attention they needed and it actually ended really well, especially just the emotional aspect of it and getting our payoffs for that and what we've put into these characters. And then there's another side where it didn't land at all and some characters just got completely forgotten at the end of the day. I think you can clearly see that the main story here is of Masha and the Marconis. It, in the middle of the season, was mostly Francis and Tony, but if you really look at Francis and Tony's story, that story kind of wrapped itself, 2 episodes ago, and they kind of just tried extending it by bringing up her kind of saying something mean to him in the sauna. So it was kind of just redundant a bit with them here. It already ended on a good close, so that story was kind of over for me. But what I pointed out is that, Jessica and Ben's characters just completely got off the main script here. Like, they were just forgotten about, and they didn't really get anything more here in the finale. I think it's a nice touch that they're the ones who are going to run Tranquillium, but that just storyline made me feel like they shouldn't even been in the show. Maybe they should have taken a liberty here and cut them out of the show if they were going to give them really any meat to their story, which was weird because they did start to get some in the beginning and it just faded out. I also think we got I still don't know Yao. I don't know this man any more than I did when I first saw him on the screen. That was a problem for me. And I think they also really faded out of Delilah because they had this love triangle of Yao, Delilah, and Masha, and they kind of skimped over that. And Delilah just became this character driving the car to be a plot device to go get the cops at the end of the day, which maybe that should have been somebody else, like that side character like Glory. Like, why waste Delilah, who we already had some emotional, investment in? So she kind of got really just thrown away here too. So that would be my group that was really disappointing. Where I think they really landed it well is with Masha herself. I think that it really did work here, and her having her moment with her daughter through the Marconis, which she wanted. I like that she ended up having the cops come on her, but that, at the end of the day, everyone believed in her cause, and that, at the end of the day, she had good intention, even when they made you think she was actually trapping these people in a room and setting it on fire, but it's just a practice they have for everyone to have a near-death experience. But what is interesting is that, why didn't they do those practices when they first came? Same with the sensory deprivation tank for Carmel, because it seemed like they're the two most effective practices. You wonder why didn't they just do that when they got to the resort. I think we would have avoided a lot of the trouble here. But I think, of course, like I've said, Regina Hall, incredible here. I think the Marconi story got so much weight to it, and it did get a really good close. They got what they hyped up, where they would have this, joint hallucination of the son, and they'd get their closure as Masha does, and it's all through each other here. Now, where I did get, a little annoyed at the realism of it was one moment in particular when Zoe gets the snowflake, right? Because at the end of the day, you're hallucinating, but there's no way her character would envision that snowflake, attach it to Masha in her head without having any knowledge of that. Where would she have come up with that to see that? So that felt a little bit of a cheat for me. That was stretching too much. But otherwise, I did like the sequences here, and I'm really blown away by Jonathan Levine's directing with how he shoots all this visually and really gets you in the mode of these people tripping out. And it was fascinating visually to watch this episode, and it was his best stuff, his best directing. But, I think there's points of disappointment. I was right that it was Carmel. It wasn't a hallucination that Masha was having, that Carmel did shoot her. But to have the twist that Carmel also was the one leaving, the messages and writing all this crazy stuff on the wall was really? that's obviously the most obvious choice when we found out, that Masha was sleeping with her husband. So I didn't like that. That made, why did you give so much time then to that little side story of someone's threatening her if it was just going to be Carmel, who we've kind of already been given now as the obvious point. So you made it the obvious point in the finale, which is always going to feel like a disappointment. So that was disappointing. I do also think that I'm so about how they wrapped Carmel's story, where it might have actually felt a little rushed, her transformation at the end, to see her in this recovery meeting and talking about forgiveness, when I would have liked one more moment at least with Carmel and Masha at the end there when Masha was leaving for the cops. She made a little head nod, but she had time to talk to Zoe there, but maybe a little dialogue with Carmel, because it was so important, that character relationship at the beginning of this episode, and we really only got to see it end with Masha, sedating Carmel. So that was a little bit of a letdown. But I think it was mostly good. I think that, I will take away performance-wise from this show that everyone did an amazing job here. And I think really, though, the standout still has to be Regina Hall to get an Emmy, to actually win an Emmy here. And I think that Michael Shannon and Bobby Cannavale should be nominated. Everyone else did really good, but those are the standouts. And I've seen a lot of people hard on Nicole Kidman's performance here. I don't think it's one of her best, but I still think it's really good. And I thought this was her best episode, clearly, especially when she has her little monologue to everyone when they first start hallucinating about her daughter and what she's been doing. I thought that was really good. She did a good way to get you to like Masha here. And I think the Marconis, the whole family, everybody here, Grace Van Patten, shout out to her. I haven't talked about her enough. You check out an interview I did with her, a couple months ago on my channel. She's a really cool person, but she did a really good job. And, I'm also going to say, besides performances were the highlight of the show, which was expected, the visuals, the cinematography, the directing, really good. The only thing that really, again, was disappointing was this writing here. I think they wrote so much good character work, but the plot, at the end of the day, wasn't that interesting. And that also, I'm saying good character work, but they skimmed out on a lot of people, which was surprising. They had all these storylines set up with characters, and then they just kind of forgot about them and didn't give weight. They just made cuts here. You know what? Let's not keep going into Delilah and Yao's relationship. Let's not keep going into Lila's relationship with Masha. Let's just forget about Jessica and Ben and make them just goofy and fall in love. So that's where it fell flat for me. I think that, I enjoyed the finale, but I wasn't crying where I should have. Maybe I felt a little emotions, but that's just me. So that also, that's from the whole season as a whole. I don't know if I cared enough here, but it's interesting that where people were expecting it to go haywire, they're kind of showing you that Masha's plan did work. But also, if you look at it, in hindsight, it's also kind of silly, because you're just well, what about the Connollys? What about the guy where he died because of this? It's kind of he was the test dummy. At least it worked with the Marconis and everyone's happy, so that kind of felt a little silly. But, I think you can think however you want about what the show's saying about hallucinogenics and what it might bring for the future with people dealing with their trauma, but they did a good job of showing how it worked here and how it gave these people their closure for all their trauma. And, I thought they did a good job with that, and I felt closure with the Marconis as I did with Masha's story, which was super important because they were the main characters here. But, it was always going to be hard because it's like an Avengers cast here, 9 Perfect Strangers. So to get everybody's mouths fed and feel like every story satisfied really wasn't the case. And like I said, I just wish they had some really good last scene with Carmel and Masha, which we didn't really get. But again, I think what I'll remember from the show the most is Regina Hall's performance at the end of the day, especially here when she's freaking out and every time she's getting claustrophobic. Just really, really remarkable stuff. I'm blown away by it. So, yeah, I mean, I'm going to give this finale an 8.8. One of the stronger episodes for sure. And I am going to give the season as a whole with all my ratings, I would say, 8.1. I still think it's a little disappointing from what the talent we have here behind it and on the screen. But, at the end of the day, they're not all going to be hits. They're not going to be amazing, but it wasn't bad. It could have been horrible too. So I'm happy about it, but I'm ready to move on. So that's how I feel, but I want to know your guys' thoughts. Please let me know your season score and your rating of this episode. And please subscribe. I really appreciate it. It helps me in so many ways. It will open more doors for me. I can do more videos for you guys that way. You have no idea. Just hitting that subscribe button helps so much. And if you really like what I do, hitting that join button down below, becoming a member, just donating, you get perks, but it will help me do this, more for you guys, do more reviews, do more interviews. I really appreciate it. I appreciate every single one of you. Don't think I notice literally every single comment. I try to respond as many as I can, so write it down below. And yeah, follow me at Steve Varley Show on Twitter, Instagram, and now TikTok as well. You get more little reviews from me, little graphics and interview clips, so please check that out, and I'll see you next time.